Hello and welcome to Global Sanctuary for Elephants podcast, Global Rumblings. Global Sanctuary for Elephants, or GSE for short, is a non-profit organization with a mission to create vast safe spaces for captive elephants where they are able to heal physically and emotionally, often from very traumatic pasts. I'm your host, Nadia Mari, and I'll be taking you to the lush jungle of the Mato Grosso region in central Brazil, home of GSE's initial project, Elephant Sanctuary Brazil. Currently home to 6 female Asian elephants, lovingly referred to as the girls. Hi, welcome, and thank you for joining us again this week for Global Rumblings. We are going to be talking about Ramba, but maybe also a few other things, because this is actually our last recording for this year. Don't worry, only for this year. So let's head on straight on down to Brazil. Hi, Kat. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Nadia. How are you?
Hi, Nadia.
I'm fine. I'm fine. There was a bit of a delay.
Yes.
Internet does that sometimes.
We are actually working on a different internet service here, so hopefully that can make things work a little bit better. But for now, we are suffering through with mostly workable internet.
We'll keep it that way. In the short introduction, I did say this is our last recording for this year.
How is that possible that we are already there?
I don't know. We do record obviously a little bit ahead, so it would be weird sort of if we meet up after Christmas and then I say Happy New Year and it's not January yet. And I think our small and dedicated team does need a little break. Yeah, we'll meet up in the new year and then not quite sure. I think the 16th of January, I think I just briefly looked at the calendar, but I think the 16th of January would be a good start for the podcast then for 2024.
Goodness.
Before we dive into this week's episode, you might remember that last week we had great fun playing our bingo/drinking game. And we also mentioned the lovely new podcast mug, which is available on GSE's merchandise shop. And this week we are actually giving away 3 of these podcast mugs. And all you have to do to have a chance to win one is recall the 3 keywords of our game. So if you were all ears last time, then send us an email to podcast@globalelephants.org naming the 3 keywords of our game. The first 3 correct entries will win an exclusive Sip Rumble Repeat podcast mug, which is the perfect companion to tie you over our holiday break. Okay, with that out of the way, let's continue with Ramba. Talking about Ramba and health requirements for her trip to Brazil. Could you tell us a little bit more about those?
Sure. I think we went into a little bit in the last episodes about the sanitation requirements and the process that was and the delay to get there. And there's several tests that need to be done for importation of just about any animal. A lot of that is based on livestock for this cattle and horses, chickens, pigs, etc. But it also applies to exotic animals as well. And so Ramba had very specific test requirements. And some of those are pretty straightforward. Some of them were a little bit more complicated. Some of them were had a few questions involved of, what is the proper way to proceed and the best way to make sure there are no ill effects on her and how to acquire those test results. Some of them are urinalysis, fecal analysis, external parasites, internal parasites, some blood work, some blood tests, vaccinations, pretty standard things that need to be done. So that's a big thing that the caregivers started working on that didn't require Ramba to do presenting her back feet or manipulating presentation of her back feet. But she was still pretty cheeky, especially with blood draw, I think sometimes. She would definitely let them know, okay, today you can do it and tomorrow you can't.
Today is not the day.
So she had her good days and her bad days with that. And again, not necessarily that she was afraid or concerned, but more, she's just a cheeky grandma. But the caregivers did really remarkably well considering they didn't have any experience training elephants going into it. And then Ramba was a very good instructor, and then Kat was in near constant contact with them to help them through those processes. But so that was not only the start of the quarantine process, but the preparation to start the quarantine process. So as we were getting closer to the arrival date or departure date, she needed 30 days in quarantine, and I think she was actually in quarantine for quite a few more days, wasn't it? It was for extended.
It was longer, but I don't
because
know
of a couple of last-minute delays. So we started the quarantine process, and once she had all those test results, then she had to stay within the quarantine process for a few extra weeks with the extra safety parameters. But she did remarkably well through all of that, and the caregivers again did remarkably well with managing all that process.
Yeah, most of it is, I don't want to say it's easy, because it's never easy when you do offer a level of autonomy to elephants. You know, it does open the door for them saying no. And the more autonomy you give them, often, you know, you can hear no more often. It's not like she was at sanctuary and it was that level, but they still worked within those sort of parameters. So, you know, one of the blood tests had to be 21 days apart. And I think that was the one they were most nervous about, because you had to get a sample and then you had to get the second sample 21 days exactly. And they actually would send somebody from the government to watch the blood test being taken so they could take the sample after it was collected and bring it to their lab. So that was the one that was a little nerve-wracking for them. But again, because sometimes you can plan all you want that today we're going to do blood draw. And if Ramba says no that day, it doesn't matter what you want or who's there watching. The answer is no. But it ended up being fine, and she was super cooperative. And as we find with elephants, you know, they seem to get when it's a little more important or a little more serious than when it's just those days where you're like, let's try blood. And if they're like, you know, you're like, never mind. So we always say they seem to know a lot more than we can figure out how they understand. But so she was very good with all of it, much to the relief of her caregivers.
Are these the same types of medical checkups and health requirements that all your elephants need when they are when they come to you? Are they required within Brazil as well? Maru was within Brazil. Did she require such extensive work as well?
No, that's only for importation requirements. You know, it's an importation issue.
Oh, it's only for importation. Okay.
Yeah. So with the local, I say local, within Brazil, we actually don't have any specific requirements by state or federal law. We just have to get a veterinary certificate. So the veterinary that is looking after them needs to sign off on their health status before they can be transported. And that has to happen within 24 hours of their departure date. But that is just a general checkup. There's no official testing that is required for that.
Yeah, and most of the importation requirements, as Scott kind of mentioned, they're made to protect livestock. You know, one of the big things they look at is hoof and mouth. And there is the concern of elephants bringing something into the country that isn't already here, or something that is going to affect the livestock. So they're not worried about our other elephants. They're not worried about anything like that. It is all pretty much livestock protection.
I think I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but talking about health and animals, I had to think about what you said that in our last recording, that you are working on a very exciting project which caused you many sleepless nights. You're building a new bird cage, a new flight cage, and also in past episodes you have talked about your wildlife rehab program. So maybe, as it is our last recording for this year, maybe we can postpone Ramba's trip, well, her flight from Chile to Brazil, because I can imagine we do need a little bit more time, because there's probably be a lot to talk about. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about the effect you are having and the impact you are having with your work within Brazil. How come you are now receiving so much wildlife for rehabilitation?
I think it's good to shift directions, because I've been yelled at a couple of times for the cliffhangers. in previous episodes.
I'm like, I didn't yell at you. Why are you looking at me?
I've had some of the listeners got upset with us, and some people that I know that are listening to the podcast is like, how could you do that? So what we don't want to do is leave you guys for, what is it going to be, 4 weeks or 6 weeks on a cliffhanger in the middle of Ramba's move, because what happens next is the relocation. So we'll spare you that anxiety and leave you with the excitement of what's to come with her relocation. And I also don't understand why I have so many nightmares about this flight cage, or had so many nightmares about the flight cage, because
I'm sorry I threw you under the bus.
It's not that complicated. I think just because of the urgency. And what happened was we received a call saying, can you take this eagle and can you take him in 3 days? Highly endangered from the data that we've been looking at. There's less
than 2,000 in the world.
Yeah, less than 2,000 in the world. So it's it's a highly endangered species. And so when you have an opportunity to assist anything like that, you kind of throw everything aside and do what you can do to make it happen. We have always planned on this flight cage. We just weren't sure when.
They wanted us to put him in the other flight cage we have, but he has, as an adult, about a 6 foot or 2 meter wingspan. And the other flight cage simply isn't big enough for him to actually be able to fly anywhere. He's a huge bird. I mean, they're decent sized flight cages, but he's just too big.
But we were also asked to take the baby ocelot last week, which we couldn't really take because the 2 cages, we could have moved one of the, we have a little owl with vision impairment.
Stan.
We could have moved Stan into another cage temporarily.
He's probably not releasable, so he gets a name, and he's absolutely phenomenal.
He's adorable. He's a burrowing owl, and he's got personality from here till next year. He's really amazing. But also, we have 2 hyacinth macaws in the neighboring cage, and we can't put predator near prey. And,
although an ocelot's not going to eat a macaw, it's still a bird next to a cat, which isn't really fair for either of them.
So we don't really have that capacity to take care of them. No. However, with this flight cage with the eagle, it's going to open up more opportunities. They had already asked us to do several hawks that need a flight cage. And the reason why, to go back to your question, why are we being asked to take so many now? I think that it's just the evolution of their program. I think they're able to do a little bit more. It's being a little bit more structured. And the person managing it is really driving it forward. So we just have more and more requests because there aren't any other facilities that can take care of most of these animals. No one has a flight cage, and it's not cheap to build, a 24 meter by 8 meter by 6 meter tall flight cage.
And he's coming from 800 kilometers away, and there's literally nothing between there and here for him. That's how little is available.
I don't really know. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of information sometimes from some of these about some of these animals. And his background that we know of is just a juvenile that can't fully fly yet. We don't know exactly what happened. We don't know if he's just fledgling or if he got injured.
He's in somebody's backyard. Essentially, they made this sort of cage.
No, it was actually
him.
Their chicken house.
Yeah,
it was their chicken pen that they had available, and they just put him in their chicken pen without chickens.
Fed him all the chickens.
Without chickens.
No, I'm kidding.
No, they did not.
I hope I'm kidding.
Drive-in.
But there's just a huge need. We're one of the largest states in the country, and there are no official rehab facilities. And again, as we talked about before, with the protected space that we have, going back to earlier episodes when we talked about the land selection, it's just ideal, and the rejuvenation of the land and the wildlife that is already here. It's just a perfect scenario with Mateus, our veterinarian, and his wildlife background. With Kat's wildlife care background and rehab background and their veterinary background, it's just a near perfect scenario for us to be able to help out in these cases. And
we didn't decide we were going to do wildlife just thinking we could do it because we had done elephants. We've talked about it in past episodes, but for anybody who missed that, I did wildlife rehabilitation in the U.S., licensed through the DEC for over 15 years. Mateus worked in a facility that did wildlife rehabilitation for however many years he did it. A lot of our caregivers have biology backgrounds and have worked in facilities with wildlife, so it's not like we were like, oh, we can do elephants, why not do wildlife too? We do have backgrounds in it, although for me, the species we have some birds that are the same, but for the most part, the species are all different, which is interesting. But yeah, so we do have experience.
So what other animals do you have? We talked about tapirs in the past and also deers, I remember.
Yeah, right now we don't have any tapirs. We have our deer, the one deer we had was released, I don't know, at this point, maybe a couple of months ago. We still just randomly, we were putting out water just because it's the dry season and any animal who wants to come by and drink water, that's not a bad thing. But now with the rains, we'll stop with water, and we were just throwing a little bit of food out. But we had that big storm that knocked down all the mangoes, so we've been spreading mangoes throughout the property for the past, I don't know, a week and a half. So no tapirs, the deer is gone. We have 2 anteaters. It's a mom and a baby. They got hit by a car. She is not releasable.
Oh, no.
The baby is hopefully releasable. They actually spent 40 days, I think it was, at the hospital that SEMA has for their wildlife. And she doesn't see fully. We're not sure if she actually hears, because the first day that they were here, her baby was crying for her, and she was acting like she couldn't hear it at all.
Yeah, she didn't even respond. And she actually, not too long ago, they were moved into the second phase of their recovery location. And the baby was on the other side of the enclosure, again, crying, exploring, but just crying to mom. And mom was oblivious, no response at all to mom. She's very nurturing when she's touching, but we don't know how well she can hear from her head trauma. She had pretty severe head trauma.
When he says she's very nurturing when they're touching, her baby is... I almost said something else. Her baby is... I'm terrible. Her baby is attached to her. I don't even know how many hours of the day. It doesn't even look like there's 2 anteaters. It looks like there's just one until you look more closely and see that the giant lump on her back is her baby. They can do that for up to 2 years. They'll just latch on to their mom and ride around on their back. So
gosh.
It was part of why they wanted them to come here, because it is such a long process, and they're hoping that, since the mother's not releasable, we can possibly keep her, and so on and so forth. But baby seems okay. They're both doing really well, but again, she can't see 100% and may not hear.
Mom had lost a lot of muscle during that time in the hospital. I mean, they were just in a little tiny pen. I'm not a pen,
a dog cage.
A dog cage, as you have in most veterinary clinics, a large dog cage. She spent most of the time just laying down. So she had lost a lot of muscle before she came. And when her baby would initially come up on her, you could see her get weak in her back legs. But she's getting more strength. She's more mobile, and she's more active. Again, highly unlikely that she'll be able to release, but there's a good chance for a baby. So that's the primary focus. And then we might have a permanent... A permanent anteater. We'll see. And then we also have the two macaws that we don't know what's going to happen with them either, because they're fully grown, but they are...
It's just going to take a long time.
It's going to take a long time because we believe they were hand raised. We don't know where they actually came from. There is a huge black market for wildlife trafficking, and we believe they came from a black market scenario and likely hand raised, and they're not even attempting to fly in the cage that they have right now. So we'll see. Once the eagle is released, then they can go into the larger flat cage, and maybe having that much more space will encourage them to spread the wings a little bit more.
But they're very sheltered in all of their responses. Like most wildlife, if anything, they become a little confrontational, which is great. That's actually what you want. You don't want, something that's supposed to be a wild animal to be happy to see you, but they just... Like, if you give them anything new, they're scared of it. We gave them a box with, nuts in it. A small box, just to give them something different to do, because they aren't trying to fly and do anything. And they, avoided it for days. And they ended up taking it out and switching it with something else. But even with the rain, they have a large section of their cage that is completely sheltered from the rain. They don't go under there when it rains. They stand under the rain and get soaking wet. I don't know, they just don't seem to really think
and
much.
Their enclosures are big enough that they could fly. I mean, for sure. They could definitely fly back and forth from one end to the other, but they act like a cage-raised bird, where they are just climbing upside down and climbing all over the place. So we'll see how that goes.
Sorry, do they react to the other macaws, to the wild ones? Do they react to them?
Yeah, we don't actually have, we don't see this hyacinth macaws here. They're a little bit more to the west than where we are.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but we do have
species.
a lot of, we have red, the green-winged macaws, and we have blue and gold macaws that fly around, and they've been over them quite a bit, and they do respond to them.
Yeah, they talk back and forth. Chatter, 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 chatter.
But it's not the same as, when we have, like we've had parakeets and different types of conure-type birds, little parrots. And what's always interesting with those is that their own species will come visit them right away. And they respond to their... Yeah, it's really amazing to watch how they come and visit each other. And but again, we don't have hyacinth macaws here. So, but for now, in terms of release and everything like that with them, the goal is to help stimulate them, help get them thinking like a wild bird would be thinking, and providing different toys and experiments for them, and
foraging, flying, all that good stuff. Building up their confidence. They just don't seem to have any sort of self-confidence. It's very strange. They very much present like a pet bird, unfortunately. So although physically they are fine, their rehabilitation is going to be longer than many would be, just because of how stunted they are mentally.
And back to the anteater, the baby, do anteaters still suckle at the age of 2, or is he already looking for ants and other
let's see,
bugs?
how old is he? He's about 6 or 8 months old.
They said 7 months when he got here.
So he's about 9 months old. Yeah. No, he will continue to try to catch free rides from mom for up to 2 years, until they are almost the same size as mom's body weight.
They usually only get pushed away when she actually gets pregnant again. So, they kind of try to monopolize their mom for as long as they can.
But he immediately started, as the first time we put a termite mound in there, he immediately started going after it. I mean, that is very instinctual. So he was trying right away. We do have to supplement. We can't put enough termite mounds in there for them, because of how much they do forage for termites. But we do periodically, several times a week, put termite mounds in there, termite mounds that are coming from the property. And
different branches that have a bunch of bugs and stuff in them. I mean, they don't strictly just eat termites, although it is their preference. But again, in the space that they have, there's not enough logs and leaves and so on and so forth, for that to be the only thing that they're eating. Once they're in the bigger yard, which is a couple of acres, then they could possibly sustain themselves on the bugs that are in there. But because mom is probably 99% not releasable, we'll still supplement her.
Yeah, and with her vision impairment, she probably won't climb over the fence where baby will. So it probably end up happening. The baby will start climbing back and forth, go explore and come back to mom. But we'll see how that evolves, and of course we can adapt what we have to them as needed. So, but lots of wildlife, lots of fun stuff. We have 3 tortoises that were released not that long ago, and they keep coming back for free handouts.
3 tortoises.
They're wild tortoises.
Have tortoises.
Yeah, they're indigenous to the area, and we just wanted to keep an eye on them a little bit, make sure they were healthy initially, gauge their appetite, all those sort of good things, make sure they were a good weight. Didn't want to let them go at the very end of the dry season when there's not a ton for them to eat, but once the rains came, they clearly showed that they wanted to leave because they were trying to dig underneath the fences and escape. So they have gone, but they don't always stay gone. They cross through once a week. One of them crosses through more often than the others. And I don't know that we've seen the female at all.
I saw her yesterday.
Oh. Yeah. See? Almost made it like a month.
And we don't see that many of them out in the habitat, but it was just a couple of days after those 3 arrived, we had a wild one starting to cross through the yard, and we thought one of them had escaped, but all 3 were accounted for, and a wild one walked through the house, like right onto the porch, basically. Yeah. Coming for, they're pretty brazen.
Yeah, we laughed. We thought it was the female. We're like, they can smell her from a mile away. It's like we're going to have like every male tortoise on the property is going to come up to the house. So
yeah, they're charming.
Maybe it was all the mangoes that had fallen off the tree that was they were fermenting. Maybe they were coming around for a drink of mango or something. Talking about the hawk again, if you say indigenous to the area, so the tortoises are indigenous to the area. If this hawk is coming, if this eagle is coming 800 kilometers, when he is then rehabilitated and let go, are there any other eagles or the same species in your area, or will he sort of fly back to where he came from?
Yes to both. It's a possibility he could fly back to where he came from. It is just somewhat instinctual for many species. Sometimes you take them back to where they came from if you know exactly where they came from so that they can be released where they came from. But if he were to be released here, yes, we do have them here. There's just so few that I'm not sure we've ever seen one. I've only seen one really, really big bird of that size since we've been here. And I only knew it was there because the chickens all screamed and went running. And they do that sometimes, so I thought they were just being babies again.
Sometimes they do that because a pigeon flew over.
But that's why when they do it, you're like, okay, what's there now? But this one time it was a giant bird. I didn't get a good enough look to see what it was because, again, I didn't expect it to be anything besides the typical pigeon that they make that noise at. But other than that, I haven't seen
they
it.
cover a pretty big home range also in their normal migration. So it's not like they are, they live right where they were born. They will migrate quite a bit.
Yeah, there's only 3 species about that size. They have harpies, they have them, and then there's another kind of eagle that's very similar to the one coming. So it had to have been one of the 3, which it was, I do not know. But,
Fascinating. So a lot going on, not only the elephants, not only the 6 elephants in your care, but also a growing number of wildlife that needs your care and attention. So, wonderful. I haven't checked up on your social media for the last weeks, I must admit. So are you writing about these for listeners who are interested? Do you write up about these projects, or haven't you got the time?
We do write about... No. We do write about them sometimes. We haven't written about building the flight cage because this last week has definitely been a push to just get that done with no spare time anywhere. But we write about... I think we just wrote about the long-eared owl that we had released a few weeks ago, who we happened to see when we were going through the gate one night. He was up in the tree scoping out his food. Usually with wildlife, we don't write about them right away because we like them to get settled before we start talking about them, because there's a lot we don't know when they first show up. And of course, we don't want to be invasive when they first show up with trying to get photos and anything like that. We just kind of want them to settle. We want to get to know, because we don't know their health status a lot of times. We'll be told they're fine, but then we end up finding out that they're really not healthy and so on and so forth. So with wildlife, it's usually a few weeks with them being here before we start talking about them. So I'm sure we'll talk about the eagle. I mean, he's not even here yet. He is at the facility getting blood tested to make sure that he is healthy, fecal checks, that sort of thing. And then he still has to make the trip from that facility to here and let him get settled in. And the reality is with wildlife, a car ride is enough to kill any of them at any point. And I don't mean to sound harsh, but, they have... Yeah, they have such strong fight or flight responses, depending upon the species, that, we would never talk about really something that isn't here yet on social media because they could die during transport. So, again, there is that delay with communication that way.
Yeah, and it's also, we don't want that to override, it's serving a huge function here in the state, but it's also not our primary role. It's our primary role is elephants, and that's where the vast majority of our time goes. And sure, we pulled the guys off an elephant fence for a week to rapidly build this flight cage, which was a huge feat in a short period of time. we didn't have any of the materials. So it's procuring the materials, getting them brought here from...
And sometimes that is the hardest part, is actually finding exactly what you need and finding somebody who can get it to you in under a month.
No, it was brilliant, though. I mean, how everyone came together for that, with Carol procuring the fencing, with another one of our delivery guys procuring the concrete post, and him loading him on his own truck and arriving here. Or the first, we got the notice on Friday, and by midday, materials arrived. Actually, it came Tuesday because the truck broke down on Monday. Wow. His truck broke down in the middle of the night, in the middle of a storm.
And he slept at our front gate. He didn't let us know until it was already very late in the evening that he was just going to sleep at our front gate and wait for us to wake up in the morning and let him in. And he was genuinely all good about it, which...
Oh.
No, he's great. He's amazing. But it's just amazing how everyone came together and to be able to help this. And the reason for, as we said before, for jumping in and taking care of this eagle is there are so few of them out there. And when you have an opportunity to help somebody that is so endangered, you can't say no.
Well, you could.
Yeah, but there's
technically.
We can't say no.
You can't.
And our team is so excited to be able to help. They're really, really genuinely excited, and guys coming in on their day off to help get this done, and it's just been amazing, an amazing team effort, and we're so very grateful for everybody that helps the sanctuary be what it is. For elephants, for wildlife, for anything that we can do. And we've had to say no to a lot of animals because we didn't have the space. We don't have a flight cage. We don't have that many enclosures. So there's a lot of times we have to say no. But the flight cage is going to be a huge asset for these animals that need that. We had a scissor-tail hawk that they needed a flight cage for that we didn't have space for him to learn how to fly. Some larger mammals that we didn't have space for. So we're excited about this opportunity for opening that door.
Yeah, sounds it. Well, I look forward to hearing then when he has arrived, and then when you have let some time go by. We are running out of time for our last episode this year, and before we maybe draw to an end, it is Christmas soon. So I was just talking about the podcast mug on your new merchandise shop, but of course, Kat and Scott, you do have many more products there. We did briefly talk about them, I think, in a previous episode, but do you want to maybe share some of your favorite items that people can check if they want to support the sanctuary and looking for an unusual Christmas present, holiday present?
I already talked about the wine tumbler last time and made myself sound like an alcoholic, so that's probably not... We're not going to talk about that one.
There are many more gifts. There's all kinds of things that you can...
We did have something designed, and it's specifically for our supporters. We have amazing supporters, as we've mentioned many times, and there is a constant conversation that goes on because our supporters talk to each other on social media, which is great. And there is this, everybody wants to know whenever anybody else showed up. So it is this phrase of Bambi was my first. And it's just saying that you joined the sanctuary during Bambi's rescue, because we do a lot of the live feeds, and a lot of people actually end up following the sanctuary during those feeds because Facebook and Instagram push them much more than anything else.
Oh, okay.
So everybody has their Ramba was my first, so on and so forth. So we have 2 designs. I think they're mostly put on t-shirts at this point. And there's one for each elephant. Well, there's 2 for each elephant that it says Ramba is my first, and it has a photo of Ramba, and there's a couple of different designs, and they're sweet. And again, it was something we wanted to do for our supporters because they really seem to be proud of when they started following and who their first elephant was. And I think a lot of them get really attached to the first elephant, that they not only saw the whole journey of, saw where they came from, how much they changed, and because it happened so quickly. So it was one of the things we wanted to do for our supporters for a while, and finally had the time to get that put together. And that's up in the store. And then we also updated our wish list, and the wish list is combined with the store. So you can go shopping for yourself, and then in the same shopping cart, you can add,
stocking stuffers for the elephants.
A watermelon for your favorite elephant, or, some foot products for Lady, or whatever else it is. So it's kind of cute. I think it's charming, but I'm biased.
Yeah, I did have a quick sneak, and I must say it is like a a one-stop shop. So I saw that you could do the merchandise, but also at the top the wish list, or you can become an Ellie Guardian, a virtual Ellie Guardian. So it's all in one space, so you don't have to like jump around between various sites, which is excellent. So we'll definitely link up to that again in the show notes.
Gifts that keep on giving, all kinds of wonderful stuff there. So, and makes shopping really easy. Just visit visit One Stop, stay at home, and buy sanctuary merchandise for the whole family.
Okie dokie. I can't believe we actually managed 24 episodes this year, including the trailer. That would be 25 for our podcast. And thank you to all our listeners and all our supporters for all your positive feedback and that you are enjoying the podcast. And thank you, Scott and Kat, for your
Nadia,
time.
as always.
Always a pleasure talking to you. So take care and we'll catch up in the new year.
Happy holidays, Nadia. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
And that wraps up our final episode for this year. Thank you so much for joining us on Kat and Scott's incredible journey. And we really hope you have enjoyed learning about not only what it took and still takes to build South America's first elephant sanctuary, but also about how truly magnificent elephants are. If you are enjoying the podcast, and we hope you are, then a great zero-cost way to support us is by subscribing, leaving us a 5-star rating, or dropping us a friendly review. Thank you again for being part of Global Sanctuary for Elephants' worldwide community, and wishing you all a very peaceful and restful holiday season, a happy Christmas and a fantastic start to the new year. And until we meet again on January the 16th with a brand new episode, take care and keep rumbling.